Right, 1 o'clock. Time to start. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the middle of the 3 webinar sessions we have today. This is going to be about KPIs and alerts in Archibus. As before, I have muted everyone else due to the fact that I have the speakers open, and obviously we don't want a large amount of speaker feedback. So in that sense, can you please leave your questions until the end, and we shall try and organize it as much as possible. Obviously, there's quite a few people that seem to have shown up late. That's fine. I assume everyone was pretty much out to lunch anyway, so quite nice that you've arrived, despite it. This webinar is expected to last about 25 minutes, the same as last time, with 10 to 15 minutes allowed at the end for questions, as you would expect, should you have any curiosities. So for the sake of you knowing, we are recording these sessions, as mentioned in the earlier webinar, so that we can post these on YouTube, and everyone who's missing a webinar can catch up online. Right. As I said before, this webinar will be covering KPIs and alerts. Somewhat repeating myself again due to it being mentioned in the earlier webinar, but it's always good to repeat with each new one. This will not be a technical training session. In essence, it's a means to cover a subject within Archibus so that you can decide whether you want to explore it further or not yourself. This is not exhaustive, and as such, should you have any major interests in it but don't really want to explore it on your own or in your own time, either due to constraints at work or due to not necessarily having the level of technical confidence that some people have, we will be hosting an Edge Advance event here in Wokingham on the 8th and 9th of March, where we'll be covering these subjects and indeed quite a few others a lot more exhaustively. All right, so let's start. What are KPIs? About mid-1900s, though performance measurement has actually been... Why would I make you the presenter, Lee? Vincent? Hang on. No, this is a technical webinar. I'm not going to make you the presenter. So you should be able to see my screen. Sorry about it. Anyway, rolling through again. KPIs. About the mid-1900s, KPIs were defined as something that can help your business to grow. Sorry. Let's try this again. Apparently controlling GTM gets in the way a bit. Sorry about that. Though performance measurement has gone on for much longer than just the last 60, 70 years or so, KPIs, as they're defined in the digital age, have been around since about the mid-1900s. They are defined as a set of targets for you as a company, or indeed as a level of, or teams within the companies to hit. For example, a KPI for sales could be, say, to hit £5,000 a month or £60,000 in a year. If you beat that, then obviously you're achieving over 100% of the KPI. If you get lower than that, then you're below it. This allows for a level of measurement within the company to see how you are performing, where you need to improve, and where to go from this. With KPIs in Archibus, you can set your own level of granularity so that you define whether you want the key performance indicators to be generally overarching or to be very specific for your team or business. What are alerts? Obviously, this is a relatively simple question to answer. Alerts are when you hit points, your criticality points within the system with your data, you are going to end up triggering an alert that shows you're doing well or better than well with a green light. You're doing okay so certainly could be doing better with amber, but nothing so badly that it can't be reasonably put behind, because occasionally you're also going to have red level alerts. These are alerts that tell you something has gone quite badly wrong somewhere, and this is where you need to actually look at the KPIs, what KPI is badly failing, and what it is you as a business needs to do to improve the KPIs. This is called the traffic light system. The traffic light system, of course, being green, amber, red for good, okay, and stop. Alerts can be more than just assigned to a metric, can be more than just an image assigned next to the performance metrics on your landing page. So they will be more than just a visual representative, which using the traffic light, they can also be email alerts that are sent out to you, the user, either on a periodic basis of giving you the data every month or so. How are you performing? Where are you on a trend? Or whenever criticality points are hit within the metric, an alert can be sent out saying that this is now a red alert situation. You need to look at this, or this has gone from red to amber, or amber to green, and you are doing really well with this. Keep up. Right. Before we can get into defining KPIs or defining your metrics and your KPIs within it, we need to consider your data. Why use KPIs? Silly boy. Why do you want to use KPIs and alerts? As I mentioned in the metrics webinar, as a result of KPIs and performance metrics on your landing page, you can see exactly how your data is going, how your business is performing. As a result of these metrics, as a result of these KPIs, you can see where you need to act immediately. As a result of this, rather than having to dig through the data, you act faster, more efficiently, which leads to an increase in your productivity within your job. If you increase productivity within your job, you're going to naturally lead to business growth as you do more and manage to achieve more. Bigger projects are achieved as a result of your increased efficiency, increased productivity, bleeding down to dripping down to the to the people within your team who are also reliant on your decisions, so that your efficiency leads to their efficiency and everything improves across the board. Business growth goes up. So KPIs and alerts, quite a useful thing within Archibus. Right, so I should have mentioned this now. KPI and alert creation is going to be entirely reliant on how your data is defined and what data you want to use. So the next two slides I will be discussing that. This is a very useful Venn diagram showing you what actual data you really want to be pulling out of this. So in the metrics webinar, I mentioned that metrics can pull from any data you've recorded within the Archibus database. They can pull and show you whatever you really need, but what data do you actually really need? Because you don't want absolutely everything at one time showing up. You need to know exactly what you need to know. The metrics presentation, I showed 3 examples of scorecards as they existed. One of them was generic, but in general, it's far more often that you will actually use dedicated scorecards, as in the other 2 examples, looking at facilities management or indeed real estate accounts and real estate management, where you only looked at the data you needed to know so that you could increase the where the business is going wrong from your role's point of view. So here we've got user feedback, cost analysis, and operational output productivity. User feedback is quite simple. It's customer satisfaction response against the quality of work you are doing. Cost analysis is the general costs that are going against your site, against your work, and against your usage of personnel. And operational output productivity is not necessarily the costs of using the people so much as it is against the output of, say, craftspersons. An example of this would be the meeting your SLA KPIs, your key performance indicators. If you're meeting your SLAs, then you're doing well or better than well in the cases where you're bettering your SLAs. Your expected response for starting and completing a work request. This would be, in brief, how to judge your operational output or productivity. The point in the center between all these 3 are where you're going, if you've got this data, all the data sets available to you, and then deliberately refined down to only the data sets that are needed for your job role within the company, you can design your strategy around what's going right, what's going wrong, and where you need to improve. Next slide looks into this into a wee bit more detail. KPI analysis. All right. So key characteristics, good metric, and it's defining KPIs. So relevance. Measures should be defined that clearly support the strategic operations of the organization. So 9 times out of 10, the organization is always going to have a strategic objective of growth, so that can be put on the wayside. So measures should always be looked into to increase your ability to grow the industry, or at least to meet the SLAs if you're a craftsperson within the industry, so that the industry can keep on performing and the building doesn't fall down around them. Quantitative and quantifiable. Success may be extremely difficult to measure if targets are not quantitative and achievable. Fantastic example here is actually if you do have a KPI or a set way of measuring customer satisfaction. This is because 9 times out of 10 people will actually try and give you a scalable level of customer satisfaction between 1 and 10. But this only creates a rough average, and across the board you'll find that these statistics can be a bit woolly. There is no 1 and 0, there's no definite right or wrong answer so much as what worked for one customer is not going to work for another customer. There are very few things other than speed and quality of performance with regards to say the service industry, where you are doing technical support or support of any kind. Other than those 2 quantifiable concepts, customers don't really mind too much around it. So you want to make your KPIs within the business as easily quantitative and quantifiable as possible. It's timely. KPIs need to be prepared and reported at a frequency that supports a particular measure concern. So again, I gave you an example of sales at the start of this, where you've got a sales target to hit of £5,000 or 5,000 a month, which becomes 60,000 a year. This is quantifiable and can be deliberately put down on time as on a monthly basis. If you want to take the rough average, then you would divide by 4 and end up with 1,250 a week, roughly. But that's, again, a bit of a woolly measurement. So with KPIs, you want to be able to say that it's quantifiable as happening X amount in Y amount of time. More often than not, Archibus will try and have a measure per month and then a yearly measurement. Cost-effective aggregation. The effort required to collate and report a KPI needs to be weighted against the benefits it can deliver to the organization. So reporting on a KPI and the data behind it can be useful if the data is actually accumulated naturally, is the best way you can actually do cost-effective aggregation. So during your job, you collect the data naturally, and it will be reported naturally, and it's a part of your business process, and it already exists within the system so that you can actually measure it, bring in the data at any one time without issue. However, if you're going to newly introduce a KPI and a way of performing, you have to weigh whether the time it takes to record the data, report the data, and create the KPI is worth it against the cost of time taken to do all of that. Do you create enough efficiency if you're, say, tweaking things enough to increase efficiency and productivity by 0.1%? Is it enough to account for the cost of, say, increasing time taken by 1%? So is the value of the time done worth it? Controllable, accountable. Linked to a manager or team clearly responsible for the measure's outcome, whose decisions and actions can influence that outcome. So KPIs also need to be given to a specific manager who actually can influence the end result of the data output. So do you want to show the craftsperson, the basic craftsperson whose job it is to go out there and fix the light or fix the wall that has been embedded, fix the light that's been embedded into the wall, the amount of time it's taken him and the amount of cost has gone against him? Or do you want to give that to his team manager who can then turn around and say, well, you could perhaps do, you're perhaps a bit below on your KPI with this one, could you perhaps work a bit faster? And look where the faults are. Do you want to give it to the cogs or the person that's looking at the whole machine? So controllable, accountable needs to be given to the overall team manager and team controller who is looking to make the improvements. Because I was mostly looking at concepts in the last webinar, and because this is so closely linked to metrics, I will now be going through a level of technical knowledge of KPI and alert creation. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about how you would create or modify metrics within your system to match the data you need to know. So this way you've got method one, which is taking one of the 190 plus scorecards and metrics that already exists within Archibus and modifying those so that they look at the data you want rather than creating from a new. In this case, it's relatively simple. You go to define scorecards within the add-in manager. From there, select the scorecard you want to change, and then you close in on the assigned metrics, and you can assign a metric or remove a metric from the scorecard, and then you can save the scorecard itself. This will allow you to simply add a metric that you've either created or one that is actually already existing to a scorecard as it already exists to your home page. This is the easiest way of doing things because there are several home pages that are already created that have performance metrics set up within them. When you assign when you identify the correct scorecard as it exists, you can go into the define scorecard within Add-in Manager and deliberately change that scorecard so that it looks at what you need it to look at. The next method is a wee bit more involved, where you actually just add a new scorecard. This is the same page, Add-in Manager, define scorecard, except add a new scorecard. This is where you'll be adding a new scorecard where you want to give it code and title that you can recognize without too much difficulty. Then go in and assign metrics to it. At first it will be completely blank, where in here where it's got several under assigned metrics where it's got several, instead it will be blank, where you want to actually just click assign metric, select the metric name, assuming you know what you actually want to use, display on scorecard, make it shown, not hidden, otherwise it won't otherwise it won't be on there. And then you want to decide what level of decimal value you want to assign to this metrics and the values shown, the data shown on the scorecard. From here though, because you've created a new scorecard, you now need to assign it to your home page. To do this through the back end, where you're actually modifying the home page XML file. This is where you go into the XML files as they exist in the back end, identify the XML file that works with the specific home page you have assigned to your user. Look for the parts within the XML file that says bucket, as a scorecard is defined within the home page as its own solo bucket. Find the scorecard value name where it says scorecard equal and change that so that it looks at the new scorecard you have created. Save the XML file, close down, restart the service, and then republish the navigation page for all roles. This will allow the navigation page to have changed, and it will change for your user. So I talked about in the metric creation. So this is the next level of it. Within metrics, you define your KPIs. So this is quite important. But metrics are the overall things you're looking to create and add to scorecards, or indeed to define and add to pie charts or other charts within other pages, should you have them. Top of the define metric page, which is found within the add-in manager, you will have a place to put the metric name and the metric title. Again, it's recommended when creating the metrics that you make this a simple enough title, simple and recognizable enough title that you will actually know precisely what it is you've made. There's no point calling it 001100 unless you've got that memorized as a code for you and it's recorded somewhere so that you can find it easily later on. And the metric description is literally just telling you what the metric is doing. It'll tell you within descriptive terms using text rather than anything else, so that when people click on the metric within the performance within the scorecard, they can actually be told what the metric is for. Business implication underneath that one is so you have an idea of what's the implication of knowing these data sets for you as a manager, where you can make your improvements, where you can make your efficiencies. And assumptions, of course, ties into that one. A lot of the assumptions will be if we make this change in the best way, we will improve the company and the business in some way. The collect from table is going to be looking at the specific tables where you want to collect the data from, and the report aggregate as is going to be sum, count, multiply, and others. I can't remember entirely off the top of my head. Should have made them notes, but non-matter. It's an overview right now. Unfortunately, for those of you who studied maths and didn't like it and ended up going to facilities management, you're going to have to brush up on your maths, because the next bit is the collect formula, where you're going to be writing down exactly all those algebraic basic concepts again to get the result you want. So cost in square foot times the area rentable times, in brackets, 1 minus the count of total employees, and then dollar is the total of SQL replace 0. So you've got SQL code in there as well. If you're not very confident, technically speaking, with SQL or indeed with maths, perhaps talking to us would be the best option here when defining the metrics. The granularity and within this is defined on the next part. So the part we're interested in is actually the criticality points. This is where you define your KPIs and where you actually define your granularity. So the granularity is defined as what level of decimal places you want to go to, or what defined points of criticality is there. Within the KPIs, you can define the trend direction, smaller is better. So for example, total costs of using your space, you want a trend of smaller being better over time. But you want the benchmark values of limit high critical, high warning, and low critical. So these will define your KPI points that you do or don't want to hit. Obviously, high warning and low warning are 2 points that you don't want to, high warning, and low critical, things you don't want to necessarily be hitting at times. The high critical is, well, it depends on which way you want to put the trend, sorry, that's the point. So you've got here smaller is better, so the smaller value is better for you. You'll find that the report low critical will be a email or alert is created and suddenly sent out saying green, everything is going great. So you can have a greater than 100% situation where everything is going fantastically. And however, because smaller is better, you've got the report limit high critical, where actually an alert will be sent out saying this is going catastrophically wrong now. And thus you want to actually have an email sent out to you saying this is going wrong. So this is where you define your KPIs through your criticality points, and you define what level of issue you have. And this will completely tie in with the traffic light system as is defined in the performance metrics. So we see there's an example there where you have either the general performance metrics showing up as green, yellow or red, or you have specific alerts put against metrics which will show up listing the name of the metric and a red, yellow or green box against it saying this is now an issue. So in conclusion, KPIs and alerts are defined by you within the metrics performance metric definition. KPIs are points of criticality where you actually want to know if your system is performing exactly as you want it to, or not exactly as you want it to. So you turn around and you find out what's going wrong or what's going right. As a result of this, you can actually improve your job efficiency and improve your job productivity, and thus leads to business growth. Same as I said in performance metrics, but considering how closely linked, that's not that surprising. They are relatively easy to create outside of the SQL formula and the maths formula if you don't like maths, but a lot of metrics are already in place with those formulas attached to them, so you can just change the data set it's looking at to deliberately design or modify those metrics so that they work for you. And they're relatively easy to put in place. It's just a case of locating the correct files and dropping it where you need them to. So, give me 10 seconds to unmute you all. Are there any questions as a result of that? Any questions? Oh, okay, I've got speaker and no one's talking. Ah, there we go. Fantastic. So there's someone. Questions?
Very good.
We've got Paul here as well. Should you wish to ask him any questions?
Is no one talking, or can we just not hear them? Was that useful for everyone?
Very useful, yeah.
Awesome.
I just have no questions.
That's good. That's fantastic in its own way. Yeah, great. Well, right, so I'll go over the same as I did in the first one. Thank you all for attending the webinar. We're good to see that there was actually so much attendance today. We will be sending out questionnaires or feedback forms, having just talked about how woolly feedback forms can be, but nonetheless we'll be sending them out for your feedback, please. If you could fill them out, then I will reiterate we will send out a discount for you with regards to Edge Advance event in March on the 8th and 9th. Should you wish to come and listen to us talk about these subjects I've covered in the last two webinars, and indeed many more. Right. Okay, awesome. Fantastic. Thank you. Right. I hope you all have a good afternoon and enjoy the webinar when it is hosted by Mark at 4 o'clock this afternoon.
Thanks a lot, Callum. Cheers.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.